With the year now at its end, it's time for me to name my favorite movies of 2022. These are the ones that appeal to me the most with their storytelling and filmmaking skills. It seemed, for the most part, that film distribution returned to normal, although you still had streamers like Netflix doing their part to fund and release some great films. Anyway, here's my top 10, starting with the latest version of a popular superhero. The Batman. There's so many film versions of the Caped Crusader at this point, what can possibly be done to bring one's own spin to it? With this movie, I thought Matt Reeves managed to find an interesting angle as he focused primarily on Bruce Wayne's detective side. This is also a younger version of the character, still trying to get a handle on this vigilante thing, and I like that he continually makes mistakes throughout the film. This rain-soaked version of Gotham City has a lot of character to it, and the rest of the people that populate this world also brought their own takes to iconic comic book creations. Catwoman, the Penguin, and the Riddler all felt distinct to this universe, and each had something to offer. Ditto Jim Gordon, and it was neat seeing him and Batman work together on this mystery. I was impressed with how Robert Pattinson played Batman here, and this was a worthy addition to the several incarnations of this famous superhero. My number 9 pick is a unique mystery of its own. Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. I liked how the first Knives Out played with the usual Agatha Christie type setup, and I enjoyed Benoit Blanc's second escapade even more. Rian Johnson develops an engaging concept that serves as a very funny takedown on the absurdly wealthy and their bubbles. I like how all sorts of rich people are skewered, although Johnson takes particular aim at an Elon Musk-type tech company owner. There are multiple clever moments in the screenplay, although what I particularly liked was a turn it makes around halfway through. That took Glass Onion to another level and added a further element of intrigue as we peel away at these characters. Daniel Craig is great as Blanc, and we're given a bit more exploration into his thinking methods, and the way he reacts to these other people on this Greek island is great. This wound up a smart and funny murder mystery, and I look forward to where Johnson potentially takes his detective next. And number 8 is a very sweet story about a British cleaning lady. Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris. This film opened in the summer, did decent business, and yet seems to have been forgotten about now, which is a shame because I found this adaptation of Paul Gullico's book to be extremely charming. I'm somebody with absolutely no interest in fashion, so the fact that the filmmakers got me completely invested in a story about a woman who just wants to go to Paris for a nice dress from Dior says something about how good this is. Leslie Manville gives a lovely performance as Mrs. Harris, successfully portraying both her kind side as well as her moments where she sticks up for herself. Her interactions with various other characters, whether at home in England or on vacation in Paris, are wonderfully written, and I just like spending 2 hours with her. Sometimes you just want a feel-good film with likable protagonists, funny and heartwarming scenes, and classic old-school filmmaking. Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris definitely delivered that for me. My number 7 pick looks into a conductor spiraling out of control. Tar. Cancel culture has been a hot-button topic lately, but this is probably the film I've seen that best explores what it actually is and the real consequences when someone becomes embroiled in controversy. Todd Field was able to explore not just this topic, but the entire development of this conductor, Lydia Tarr. Brilliantly played by Cate Blanchett, I found this an involving character study that really takes you inside her head as her life unravels. Field makes good use of the concert hall she works in and uses other devices to get to know her. Opening the film with an extended interview and a university lecture was particularly inspired on his part. The few points where Tar goes slightly surreal feel earned, and it definitely leaves you thinking about cancel culture and whether this phenomenon has any real impact or not. And number 6 is a hilarious comedy about a teenage girl dealing with an unexpected transformation. Turning Red. If you saw my list ranking my favorite animated movies of the year, you have probably already figured out this is one of 3 animated films on this list, so I'll try not to regurgitate the things I said in that video. I'll just mention I thought Domichi did a wonderful job of telling the story of a young girl growing up, while also mixing it with an animal transformation story and a tribute to early 2000s boy band fangirls. I will say it was unusual how with this movie there were people who were annoyed that a Chinese-Canadian director from Toronto decided to make a movie about a Chinese-Canadian girl from Toronto. This was an actual problem some took issue with, and even more bizarre, they said the concept was too specific and not universal. Well, as someone who has never been a teenage girl, or Chinese, or obsessed with boy bands, I can tell you that's absurd, because I love this movie and enjoyed watching May as she dealt with these various conflicts. It's definitely an example of this exciting age Pixar Animation Studios is in right now. My number 5 movie tackles a broken friendship in Ireland. The Banshees of Inisherin. Martin McDonagh seems to have a knack for making films that mix dark comedy with exploring the uncomfortable truths of his characters. The Banshees of Inisherin continues that and creates a compelling narrative of someone trying to understand why his friend does not want to speak to him anymore. Something I did not expect was how funny this movie would be, as the characters had plenty of humorous banter, and McDonagh fills the script with so many clever lines. Colin Farrell is fantastic as the lead protagonist, who can seem to take the hint, but then his former friend Colm is also being absurd for his reasons of no longer wanting to interact with him. The film managed to dig into these two and how this one decision leads to a snowball effect of wild events. Carrie Condon also gives a wonderful performance as Farrell's sister, who becomes annoyed at the both of them. Even the donkey turns in great work. Madonna uses the location to great effect, and I especially like the use of color in depicting this island. As the film played on, it definitely kept me wondering how this broken friendship would escalate. And number 4 is a science fiction adventure with a well-known space ranger. Lightyear. A lot of people were confused how this could possibly be Andy's favorite movie. However, I understood it perfectly well, as I feel I would have loved this film as a child too. I thought it delivered in being an exciting adventure, and the concept of stranding Buzz Lightyear and his crew on this planet was an intriguing one that Angus MacLane uses to explore plenty of compelling themes. Science fiction is one of my favorite genres, and Lightyear included many of the elements I find appealing about it, with its depiction of a futuristic society, the drive to improve humanity with the technology available, and of course, plenty of robots. Michael Giacchino also wrote my favorite score of the year, with a great rousing theme for Buzz. For years I actually thought it would be neat if Pixar made a computer-animated Buzz Lightyear Star Command movie. This wasn't quite how I imagined it would be, but this honestly might have been better than what I pictured in my head. It's disappointing that likely won't be a sequel, but I'm happy this film exists for me to watch again and again. My number 3 pick is a fresh take on a classic story. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. How do you take a story that's been adapted for the screen several times and still find a new angle? Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafson found a way. A large reason why this film works is because they use the story to explore the dangers of fascism. This is a common theme in Del Toro's work, as he's a filmmaker with a particular dislike towards fascist regimes and strict authoritarians. This is especially evident in Pan's Labyrinth and Hellboy, which also rank among my favorite movies of his. The notion of this wooden puppet arriving and the fascists wanting to use him for their evil deeds was such a clever idea, and the way the film plays around with the familiar beats of Carlo Collodi's story was imaginative. A lot of people felt the need to compare this film to other adaptations, like the Disney-produced ones, but I don't think that's necessary. The movie succeeds on its own brilliant merits and feels unique in its telling. And number 2 is a filmmaker looking to understand his parents. The Fablemans. I'm a huge fan of Steven Spielberg, so this is probably the least surprising entry on this list. Of course, a movie that depicts his younger years is going to appeal to me, and I enjoyed seeing how he took various elements of his life and put them into the story of aspiring director Sammy Fableman. However, this is more just a movie about a young man who loves movies and wants to make them. It feels like Spielberg's career has been building up to this exploration of his parents and why their marriage fell apart. Throughout his filmography, you see Spielberg attempt to understand why his father was often focused on work and what exactly resulted in him eventually living in a single-parent household. This is what this entire movie is about, and he, along with his co-writer Tony Kushner, portrayed this beautifully. The entire cast delivers, although I think the standout is Paul Dano as his father. It's a quiet, subtle performance that also allows us to truly know who this person is and why he makes certain decisions in regards to raising his family and living with his more artistically minded wife and son. Steven Spielberg has made several excellent films, and The Fableman deserves to join that list. And my number 1 movie of 2022 is another movie about filmmaking, albeit with a lot more debauchery and wild parties. Babylon. I've long been fascinated by 1920s Hollywood, and this movie captures the chaotic feeling of that period of the film industry when they were still trying to figure the medium out, and sets were not nearly as controlled as they are now. The promotion of Babylon is primarily focused on the wild party scenes, and Damien Chazelle definitely goes all out in depicting those. However, what really drew me into the film were the scenes and movies being created. Chazelle finds a lot of humor out of the various complications that can arise when trying to film even a simple scene. The sequence where Margot Robbie's character, Nellie Leroy, acts in a sound movie for the first time is easily my favorite scene in any film this year. Babylon is able to develop its 4 major characters and the various events that occur to them as they deal with the increasingly changing landscape of the era and the calls on morality that rain down on Hollywood. I was riveted through the entire 3-hour runtime, and this marks another triumphant film in Damien Chazelle's impressively growing filmography. Now let me know in the comments what your favorite movies of 2022 are, and thank you for watching.